Hey guys, PB here from the Home Automation Project. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can build your own Wyoming local satellite using this device, which is a ReSpeaker Lite, and I'm going to show you how you can configure local micro word processing, which means wake word detection will happen on this device as a standalone without the need to be connected with Home Assistant server. Only when you issue a command after the wake word, it is then that this device is going to connect to the Home Assistant server and process that command. So this is going to be a very handy addition. I know the timing of this video is coincidental because just now the Namuru Casa team has released a voice assistant of their own, which they call, I believe, the voice assistant PE. Anyway, so it's a very nice timing, and that device, definitely go and check out the device. I still don't have one of those, but as you know me, I'm very much focused on DIY and doing my own projects, so I'm going to probably build a similar one for myself. One of the good things that has recently happened is they have definitely improved the voice assistant feature in Home Assistant, and it has gotten faster, snappier. Actually, if I compare it to my other ecosystems in the house, it definitely looks like it's way faster and way snappier than it was before. And they have also added a wonderful feature to the voice assistant wherein it now falls back on a AI server when you issue it a command which it doesn't recognize within the Home Assistant ecosystem, which is going to be very, very useful in the future projects that I do on this channel. So do check out my other videos on this channel as well in future. But without further ado, let's get started. Hey guys, so one of the popular options available in the market as a hardware device for setting up a Wyoming voice assistant is this device, which is called the ReSpeaker Lite. So what's special about this device is it has these microphones. This is a 2-mic microphone. You get these devices in a higher configuration, which has like 4 and 6 mics, which gives you a good sound quality as well as audio output. And it does have the sound processor on board these devices, which helps in noise suppression as well as good audio quality. It's not too costly. For me in Australia, it cost me like around $40 to order it online. You can get this along with this ESP32 S3 board soldered in and a speaker. So this kit is called like a voice assistant kit, I believe. I'll leave a link in the description for this. I couldn't find that kit online, so what I did is I ordered this ReSpeaker Lite board separately and the ESP32 S3 separately from Amazon, and then these speakers, they are like $10 for 4 of them, so I ordered them online as well. Something to note is you don't absolutely need to use these tiny speakers. I haven't found a way to actually control the volume on these, and the quality of the audio out of these speakers are pretty much useless. I will show you 2 other ways you can easily do it. So one is very simply, you can use a 3.5mm audio jack, which is here. So you can use this and connect to any normal speaker. Like I used my JBL Flip 3 and I just connected here, and then I can use the volume control on the speaker itself, and it gives me perfectly good voice quality. The other way, and my preferred way, is to send the audio to your Home Assistant server, and then from there you can play it or stream it on any device which is connected to your Home Assistant. And I think that's probably the best solution in longer term, because you can switch your devices later on without impacting where you are adding this device. So yeah, we'll see all this on this tutorial. So last thing to note, when this P32 board comes, S3 board is provided. Even with the voice assistant kit, this little antenna for the Wi-Fi, this is not connected, so you'll have to physically put this on here. It's pretty simple. It's just you have to snap it on, and that gives it the Wi-Fi capability, which allows this to work like a proper satellite, because as you can see, there is no J45 jack. So there is no Ethernet jack in this device, so you need the Wi-Fi for it to be able to communicate to your Home Assistant server from across the room. So to connect the speaker on the board, you just need to ensure that it's side facing inwards like so, and it should naturally fit one way only, and just push it in. That's it, you've got your speaker locked in, and it's integrated. Once you connect this to your computer, it will automatically pick up this speaker as a source. However, you can override it by connecting another source through this 3.5mm jack if you want. And the last thing that you'll need for this project is just a USB cable to connect to the board. Okay, so before we move on to installing the softwares, one thing to note is that there are 2 USB-C jacks here, one which is on this ESP32 S3 board, and the other one is on the device itself. So any kind of updates to the firmware, you need to use the board's own USB-C jack. And when we are configuring the ESP node, that's when you plug into the ESP32. This is a bit of a complication with this setting up this hardware device, but once you get the hang of it, trust me, it's pretty simple. And the other good thing is that once you have this ESP32S board configured in Home Assistant, you can enable OTA updates, and then you don't need to really plug it in on this side at all. Even if you plug it in on the other side, it supplies power to the ESP32S board and you can connect it. So I would say for a tiny device, this is definitely a very, very excellent package, and I would definitely recommend going for it if you are going into DIY projects and if you want to build your own assistant satellite. This is a very, very good investment, I would say, for the price. Okay, so without further ado, let's get onto the computer and let's see what are the softwares that we need to install and what are the features that we can enable with this one tiny device. So the steps that you need to follow are more or less mentioned here in the wiki for ReSpeaker Lite. Again, I will leave a link to this in the description of this video. So it talks about the features, the hardware components, and also the pinouts. If you want to do a little bit more DIY, and if you're familiar with I2C and I2S protocols, you could directly use the pinout configurations on this board to configure. Mainly the SD and the SL ports can be used to send I2C instructions. If you're familiar with Arduino applications and how to write some C++ code, it could be a wonderful way to customize this. And I'm sure there are people out there who have come up with the nice software features using Arduino toolkit. It's a thing to know, but again, this specific project is not going to be relevant. If you see here, it mentions that out of the box, this device comes with the ReSpeaker Lite pre-formatted, so it's pretty good if you want to use it as a add-on USB mic and a sound output device. Obviously, by connecting a speaker to it, and just connect this USB on the hardware to your, for example, on this Mac, if I connect it, it will show up as a sound device exactly like it's shown here. But for this project, for setting up the Wyoming satellite on Home Assistant, it's not going to help us. We need to flash the I2S firmware version, and this is one of the things that stumped me at the beginning, that unless we format this I2S version, we won't be able to use it properly with its full bells and whistles, such as the LED light here, or ability to configure the other buttons on this device as well. So that's something you have to keep in mind. To flash this firmware version, you have to use a software util called DFU util. I have on the Mac OS, but I've also tried it out on the Linux in my Raspberry Pi, and these instructions work perfectly fine. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is when you get download the firmware file, you should download using the raw link. To download the file, you can go to this link. I will leave the link in the description where you will find the latest firmwares. So you need to check this naming convention here. So the one which says I2S is the one which we're after. The one which says USB is not the one we want for this project. The other thing I found in my testing, that this 48K version, for some reason the sound was getting very much distorted or not transmitting well. Maybe it's because of the high quality of the sound, the size of the sound files are bigger, so maybe that was an issue. But when I switched to this 1.07.7 version, everything worked perfectly fine and smoothly across my network. I am sticking to this, but maybe I'll try out the 48K version later and see if anything improves. I'll post an update to this video. To download this, click on this file in here and then click on the raw button here, and that will download your file to your local machine. So you need to remember to use this raw button to download, otherwise it just doesn't work. Trust me, I have wasted almost an hour on it. Once I've done that, the first thing obviously is to connect the device. Remember, we're going to flash the firmware, so we are not going to use this port, but we are going to use this port. So let's turn it around. Let's connect it. So as soon as you connect it, you should see the LED switching on, and there are two LEDs here. One is on the board here, which shows the power LED, and the other one is the power LED on the ESP32S. There are two more LEDs here. One is for the mute button. So if you press the mute button here, you can see the red light coming on. That's your dedicated LED for mute. And then the other one button is, you can configure it through software, but it's not in use. But there is a small RGB module here which can be programmed as well. We will program this using the ESPHome software later on. Alright, so now that I have it connected on the correct end, very important, let's go ahead and issue the commands to install the firmware. So to install the firmware, you can follow these commands as verbatim. Let's literally these commands work as they are mentioned here. Brew install. If you don't have I've opened up the terminal. I'm on my Mac here, and if you don't have the DFU util, you can use this first command, and if you don't have root privilege, you might need to use sudo as well. But I've done it already, so I'll go to the next command, which is this dfutil -l. So as you can see, this is a 0.11 version, so that's fine. So that confirms that you have the dfutil installed correctly. As you can see, I issued this command, but I don't see these lines here, which should show if your device is detected. That tells me that this device has not been detected by my computer, and I suspect the reason is that the cable that I'm using, this cable is a power cable but not a data cable. This is a very common issue with these devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the cable, and let's see if you have better luck. I've switched the cable now, so let's try that command again, and voila, device has now been found. And you can see the software version here is 0207. That's definitely the USB version on this. Let's go ahead and run the command to install the firmware. I have downloaded it into my local folder, which is in downloads, ReSpeaker Lite. I have the folder here, ReSpeaker Lite i2sdf firmware 1.0.7.bin. so that's the one which I need to install. So let's use this command. I don't need the sudo on this one because I am on the Mac, but you might need to add sudo if you're on the Linux. So I'm going to give the full path. Let's copy, paste, and make sure if you have multiple bin files, make sure that you are using the correct one and hit enter. Right, you can see the installation happening, resetting the USB, and it's done. The thing you need to do here is just take out the plug and plug it back in. So, and now if I check the version by issuing the previous command, voila, you have 0107. So that means it worked fine. The firmware got updated. Step 1 done. Let's go to this manual now, and I've checked this step is complete. Now next step would be to, if you go down to the menu under application, you will see this menu called voice assistant system home assistant. There's a video here as well which you can refer, and then here it goes through the steps that you need to follow in order to set this up in home assistant. Most of the steps you would be familiar with if you have watched my previous video. I've already done the setup for all these services, which is the Whisper, Piper, and Wyoming protocol integration in home assistant. So all this is already set up in my test instance. So OpenWork and OpenWakeWord as well. You don't really need OpenWakeWord for this device, because one of the most biggest utility of having this device is you can run a local wake word on this device. That's the whole reason of having a satellite, is that you have the local wake word processing happening on the device, so that it doesn't have to keep a channel open with your home assistant. And once a wake word is detected and a command is issued, it is at that moment of time it is going to connect to home assistant and get a response back or perform the actions that are asked. So OpenWakeWord, not mandatory. If you have it, great. Maybe you can use it for some kind of troubleshooting, but you definitely need a Piper and a Whisper service. We definitely need Whisper and Piper. So a Whisper is going to be your speech to text service, and Piper is going to be your TTS or text to speech service. So we need these two for this project work. I'm skipping those configurations. Those are there in my previous video. You can watch it from there. Next step down here. This is an example where they've used a Sonos speaker, I guess, but yeah, I don't have that, so I'll skip that as well. And it talks about going to voice assistant and then setting up the voice assistant with the OpenWakeWord, which we are not going to do in my video, and I will show you in a minute that you don't need it really with this device. Now the next steps mentioned here, we are going to do this. So we need to set up the ESPHome code to flash onto this device, and then we are going to have to physically flash the code itself. The way to do this, if this is the first time you're setting this up, you wouldn't be able to connect to the ESPHome over the Wi-Fi or wirelessly. So what we need to do is we need to switch this cable from this side to the other side to the ESP32 board before we start these next steps to that. I have now switched my USB input to the ESP32S3 device. You confirm that this is working. You can go to this web.esphome.io website and hit connect, and it should show you this kind of entry, which is your ESP JTAG serial debug unit. Something like this will show up. If it doesn't, if you see the other options but not something like this, that means again check your cable, check that you're connected to the right device, and also check that you're on a Chrome browser, because it doesn't work with every browser. but definitely it works with Chrome and Firefox. You need to use the right browser for it. At this moment I'm not going to connect to it, but we'll rather go to the Home Assistant instance to set up some of the ESPHome code first. So I'm on my Home Assistant, and here you can see this ESPHome device compiler option. Go here, and then first you can click on new device and hit continue, and you can name this device, let's say ReSpeaker Lite project, or actually let me name this as ReSpeaker 2 because I already have the ReSpeaker figure, so I want to just do a new configuration. Choose the option ESP32S3, and you can see this placeholder has been created. You can skip this step. Now you click on edit, and then whatever is populated by default, you can just delete that, and instead you need to paste it ESPHome configuration, which I will use from this link. I'll go to this link. So this is the code that is given by this person, Format BC, who's been doing some excellent job in this space, and I really appreciate all his efforts. He's also, by the way, available on Discord channels to answer your queries, which is really great, and he has definitely helped me on more than one occasion, so kudos to him. So you can literally copy this whole thing as is and come back to your ESPHome, and on this YAML you can just paste the whole thing. Now if you see that on the ReSpeaker Lite sample page as well, like the wiki of the ReSpeaker Lite, you can see that they have provided a skeleton ESPHome code as well for you to use. You can try it out initially if you don't want to go into this much detail. You can try that option out as well, but it enables basic functionality. You can test your device, but this one gives you way more configuration options, and this also allows you to control volume using a media player option, or you can even stream music for that matter. And also you can configure the mute button, the LED lights, etc. So this is a better, more advanced code. One thing I would say is that there were some issues with the code. I don't know what exactly was not working, but I ended up editing this code. So I borrowed so I looked up some other sample codes out there, and in the end I created my own one using this as the base, but adding some variations to it on top of it, which I think for me works perfectly. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using this code, I'm going to use my own code, and we're going to go through this, and I will leave a link in the description to my webpage from where you can download the code that I use. I will also leave a link to this page in case if this code works for you, then fine, you can go ahead with that. Right, so let me update this with the code that works for my own setup. I have now pasted this code here. Things that you need to take care is definitely set up OTA password if you want. You can, this is optional, it can work without password as well if you are in your local network, but do check here that this OTA option is there so that you can wirelessly update the ESPHome device in future and you don't need to plug it in again. The other thing is the Wi-Fi. Use the secrets option on the ESPHome page to configure the Wi-Fi SSID password, and you can configure a fallback IP in case there's some IP issue. You can use this as an access point to connect as well. I don't need it because I have I administer my own firewall rules in my network, so I'm fine with that. And the other thing is this API. I should make sure that this API option is available as well. Right, so rest of the details are standard. This captive portal, start with the external components, which are the dependencies that you need for this program to run. You have the IDOS audio component, which helps you to configure the GPIO pins needed for the audio. And then you have this device configuration, which talks about the mutes, where you can configure the various options that showed up on the device. The microphone configuration. This script installs micro wake word by default, which is the one which you would need in doing a local wake word, so pretty important. It also configures the LED to be used with micro wake word. And then the most important section in the script is this voice assistant section, where you can configure the noise suppression level and all the voice assistant related details. And it also configures a default media player called Nabu Media Player. That's just the name you can give, and along with that some of the LED functions as well. Then you have a timer function available here. I don't use that, but if you want to use, you can. Then switch is basically it's associated with the timer, so if you want to switch on or off, switch off the timer, you can use this switch, and the light as well along with the timer. So this whole timer functionality, if you need it, you can use it. It's a bit more advanced. Maybe for this first project you don't need to worry about it. Right, so with this configuration, let's hit install, and what I will advise is just go for manual download. Don't try any of these options for the first run. Go for manual download, let it compile, and once it's compiled, it will allow you, give you an option to download. So let's come back once the compilation is done. By the way, it is going to take some time for the compilation to happen when you are doing it for the first time, because it's quite a bit of software that we're downloading here. It includes a lot of advanced configuration around speech and audio, so there's a lot of libraries to compile. So give it some time, be patient, have a sip of coffee, and maybe even hit the subscribe button while you are at it. So the compilation is finally completed now. It took me a good 5 to 6 minutes for the compilation on my setup to complete, so be patient with this setup. Also, if you do see some warnings while the compilation happens, don't worry about it. It works pretty fine despite those warnings. So now once this completes, you have got these two options. Just click on the one which says factory format, previously modern, and then it should download the .bin file into your local folder, and you're ready to flash ESPHome software now. So to do that, head over to the esphome.io browser on your Chrome or your Firefox browser. So back on this screen, ensure that you are still connected to your ESP32 board here, and hit connect, and then hit connect. So this should bring you to this screen, and it should say here like connected. So hit the install button and then choose the binary file, the .bin file that just got downloaded from the compilation. So in my case, it's this bin file here. So let's hit open and hit install. Initially the speaker is going to be pretty loud, especially if you're using this tiny speaker, so just ensure that you're ready for that sound. Unfortunately, this is a problem which I can't solve with the speaker, so we'll have to live with it for this project. So the install is complete. You can disconnect now, and then take the plug out of the ESP32 board and switch the plug to the other side to your ReSpeaker Lite. We'll go and look for this device in Home Assistant in a sec, but one thing to note is that the Wi-Fi credentials that you have set up on this device, make sure that the Home Assistant instance has access to that IP. If it is on a different subnet or a VLAN, you need to configure a firewall to give the permissions for this device specifically. It has to be two-way for permission, unfortunately, because if you want to use the local wake word, then it needs to be able to initiate a communication to Home Assistant. So that's why you need to give it access from this device's network to Home Assistant network, as well as from the Home Assistant network or LAN to this device. So you have to configure both ways. Let's head over to Home Assistant. Let's see if our device has now been discovered. Back on the Home Assistant, one thing you need to make sure is when it is plugged on, from now on you should be able to see this online. So that means definitely your device is discovered. If I go to settings, devices and services, you should, as you can see. So in my case, because I already had the ReSpeaker Lite configured, so I guess it's just picked it up. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to ESPHome, and I'm just going to delete this device because it's anyway not going to work perfectly. And there you go, it has now found a new ReSpeaker Lite. If I go to the top level menu as well, you can see it will find it here. You can simply click add and then hit submit, and in a few seconds your device should be added to Home Assistant. There you go. Let's give it an area office finish. And under the ESPHome integration, I'm also assuming you already have the Hacks ESPHome integration, which you can download from this Hacks repository. If not, you can see one of my earlier videos where I have showed you how to use ESPHome using a development board. So if you go here, you can see this device has been added, ReSpeaker Lite 2, and there is this RGB LED. We can configure that. So let's hit on. There you go. You can see the LED is working fine, so that's good. Timer, you don't need to worry. The only other thing that you need to configure here is the assistant. By default it goes to preferred, but I've got two assistants here, one which talks to my local Olama instance using Olama, and the one which I'm going to use for the project here as an example is the default assistant. So to configure this assistant, go to voice assistants, and then under default assistant, make sure you have the right conversation agent selected, the whisper and the piper. I have these down as local ones because I also have another set of these services configured on my AI server. And under wake word, if you see here, I have not set up any wake word. That's because this device, which is acting as a satellite, will also do the local wake word processing. You might be wondering at this stage that where is the wake word, what is the wake word you're going to use if I'm not going to set this up. Yeah, so for that what you need to do is you need to go to your ESPHome compilation and go to edit, and you will see here there will be a model mentioned here. So just search for the keyword model, and if you see here the path to the model, this has been given as OKNabu. So this is the place where you can change this configuration. If you want to use a different wake word like Hey Jarvis, you can change this configuration. One thing I found in my experience with these wake words is that OKNabu is the most responsive and most well-trained wake word here. You can train your own custom wake words as well. I will probably make a video on that in the future, but it's not going to be much use in your day-to-day usage. I use this quite heavily, the voice assistant function, and seeing the best output is when I use the wake word OKNabu. So I'm going to stick with this video, but in case you want to try out the other wake words, you can use this configuration. When you hit save, and you can download it now. This is now wirelessly connected to Home Assistant, so you can download the updated ESPHome file over the OTA or through the method which I already showed, and then you should be able to use a different wake word here. Okay, so let's do a trial with my voice assistant here. So the best way to understand if it's working or not, I would say, is go to debug, right? And let me try waking up the local wake word thing. OKNabu, switch on smart lamp.
Sorry.
Right, so now if I go to debug, you can see, yeah, I think it didn't hear properly. So let me try again. OKNabu, switch on smart lamp. Yep, there you go. So it's working perfectly. Let me actually bring the light to the camera, in front of the camera, so that you can see it in action. Okay, so now I have the smart lamp here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the speaker next to the mic so that you can hear what it's saying as well. Okay, so let's try that again. OKNabu, OKNabu, switch on smart lamp.
Turned on the light.
OKNabu, turn off smart lamp.
Turned off the light.
So there it is. It works. As you can see, the response is not great. It sometimes doesn't understand what I'm saying. I've seen that if I switch to a different TTS service, specifically if I use a better TTS service, definitely I've seen a way more improvement in recognition. The other thing is, I have also noted, don't get me wrong, Home Assistant guys are doing a perfectly excellent job, but the native Home Assistant, it's just barely scratches the surface, I would say. But when I switch to my local Ollama based, even a basic model like Llama 3.2, which is not trained for Home Assistant devices, but if I use that as my backend, conversation is definitely way better, the recognition is better. There's a marked improvement in my interaction, so much so that I have now shifted to using my Llama assistant here as my preferred assistant. One other thing you will notice is now if I hit the debug, you'll see the last conversation that happened, but you can't see the Home Assistant waiting for wake word. This also shows that now it is a local wake word processing instead of processing on the Home Assistant server, which definitely takes the load of the server. Now, last step would be to be able to use a different sound device, right? So to change the speaker output, like installing the speaker output from this local device, which is not very convenient if you want a production setup. If you want to switch to streaming the audio assistant from any speaker which is connected to Home Assistant, it's a very simple edit of the home file. What you need to do is you need to just go here in the section which starts which is around the voice assistant. This is the name of the section, and get rid of the media player that we are using, which is the Nabu player, because we don't need it to control audio in this case. So let's comment out this line, and I'm also going to comment out the timer functionality because it is going to try and use the media player, and I don't really find any use for this feature anyways, so I'll take those off, and we are going to add one more section here which is labeled as on STT start. And there are a few things that we need to do. We have to call the service of tts.speak on Home Assistant, and you need to pass the entity ID of the TTS service that you have. In my case, IP_2 and cache true or false, either is fine. Keeping the cache true tries to remember the phrases, and the media player entity ID. This is the main one. This is where you can point it to a Echo device or iPod or any other device which is connected to a Home Assistant. And then this is going to be as is this piece of code. So if you are not sure if not sure which parameter to use, you can test this out in your Home Assistant. So if you go to developer tools and in actions, so here you can test out the same parameter. So you can see here, for example, I have this action tts.speak message hello and then media player.imxify. So I've got the browser mod hex extension hex application, so I can use my browser as a media player as well, which basically does nothing but uses the local machine as the machine on which this browser is running, which is my iMac, is going to use the speaker of that machine. And then here you can try out your different TTS services if you have more than one. In my case, I have 2 versions of Piper, so I'm using the Piper version 2. So if you hit action, so as you can see, I hope you heard that, but basically you can hear the praise hello being spoken. So that means these parameters work fine. So you would use the same parameters here. I'm going to leave this code in the link in the description, so you can copy it from there and modify it according to your setup. So this time around, we don't need to physically connect this from the Chrome browser as I did earlier, because we have OT enabled. We can simply flash this update. So save the change and then hit install, and then choose the wireless option. You can let this proceed over the OTA, and it should get flashed onto your P hardware. So let's give it a few minutes and let's come back once this is done. By the way, if you do encounter failure connecting the USB device, you can just hit retry. It sometimes does that, but it should start eventually. Right, so the installation is completed successfully. Now remember, since we are flashing a new firmware, so this device is essentially been reset to its original state. And I'm going to hit stop because I don't need the log output from this device. But one thing you need to do is you go back to settings and device and services, and although this device you will see that it's appearing here, it will take a bit to refresh because it's starting fresh, but you need to go here and hit configure again, and in case you see that this allow option is no longer ticked, then you'll need to tick it. In my case, I've already done that, so it's ticked. But I'll just hit submit once more, just make sure. Right, so again, do a quick check that the device is working fine. Let's turn it around the other way and let's check that the LED light controller is working. Yup, it's working fine. So that means your device is configured properly. Double check the assistant is default assistant, which is true. In my case, is the one I want. So one thing, I'll just increase the volume on my machine here so that you can at least hear it's talking in the background. With this updated code, when I invoke the voice assistant, the reply should come out of the speaker attached to my computer here instead of the speaker attached here. So let's give it a try. Abu, switch off smart lamp.
Turned off the light.
So there you go. Now you can use any speaker which is connected to your Home Assistant as the output for this device. Isn't it cool? So yeah, I think that we'll wrap it up here. I hope this one has been useful for you guys. In the next one, we are going to talk about a bit more advanced configuration and how I am truly going to set up my voice assistant, which I will be using as my daily driver. Hopefully you find this video useful, and if you do not forget to hit the like button. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and as we go along this journey, I'm going to improve upon this project step by step, and I'm going to add more and more features to this voice assistant of ours. So this is going to be a very interesting journey. Stay tuned for more such videos, and you can subscribe to my channel if you find these videos useful and helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay safe and stay connected.